Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha. I'm a reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another post-game reaction. The Lakers beat the Minnesota Timberwolves on a game-winning shot by Austin Reaves. He is him. The week of Austin continues after back-to-back career best performances against the Kings, and I would throw the Blazers game right up there with Austin's best games as a Laker. He comes back with a career best, tying 16 assists, hits a game winner against the team that knocked the Lakers out in 5 on their home court, and against two of the defenders who gave Austin the most problems in that series in J.D. McDaniels and Rudy Gobert, two all defense level guys, two guys who I think on the, were among the Timberwolves players who outplayed him at various points of that series. So Austin exercised his demons against the Wolves over the past week or so. The Lakers exercised their demons against the Wolves over the past week or so. They improved to 3-2. They win the season series against the Wolves 2-0, and they improved to 2-1 without Luka Doncic and without Luka and LeBron over this stretch, with Luka coming back on the horizon. So we have a lot to get into, but before we get started, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. I've seen a lot of Jake LaRavia comments, and Jake had himself a game. Let's get into it here. So, overarching thought for me, got to start with Austin. He has been the story of the past week, and I think he is rewriting his ceiling and his floor in real time in front of us, right? Because we now have this growing sample size of what Austin can do when Luka and or LeBron are out of the lineup. And we saw shades of this even a couple years ago, going back to like the 2023-24 season, not quite at the level of the past 2 years, but we started to see like, okay, Austin can do more with the ball in his hands. And when he's the lead ball handler, like he can step up and assume more usage and be a primary ball handler for this group. But we knew that the offense funneled through LeBron and AD. Then last season, the beginning of the year, the Lakers make the decision to empower Austin Reaves at the expense of D'Angelo Russell, ultimately moving him to the bench and trying out different co-backcourt partners with Austin. Remember, they were trying out Cam Reddish and Dalton Knecht, ultimately settled on Max Christie. But it was clear that part of the decision from the Lakers front office and the Lakers coaching staff was, here are the keys to the offense. Go learn on the fly. And there was certainly a lot of growing pains and a bit of a learning curve with Austin in terms of, remember, like the Detroit games where he struggled with turnovers and he struggled against long athletic teams, and even Minnesota at times last season, including in the playoffs. But we saw tangible progress from Austin from, say, like November through January, February. Then the Lakers make the Luka trade, and that obviously remakes the entire roster, remakes their entire offensive identity. But even then, the first game, technically, LeBron is out and Luka's out. Austin has the big performance against Indiana. Then a little bit later, LeBron is out dealing with the injury that he suffers against the Celtics. Luka is out. They have that crazy stretch of 6 games in 8 days, and Austin drops, I believe it was 41 or so, or maybe 37 against the Nuggets. The Lakers nearly beat a full-strength Nuggets team in Denver, and that was like some of the signs of, okay, like when Austin has the keys to the car, when he has the keys to the Ferrari, he is doing something special with it. And it's not like he's not obviously Luka, he's not LeBron, but he is pretty close when he has the keys to the offense. Then we've now seen this past week where, Sacramento was not the best defense in the league. I would contend they're a bottom 5 defense and maybe a bottom 5 team, still drops 51 on them, near 51-point triple-double. Portland is one of the best defenses in the league. Second night of a back-to-back, hounded by Tamani Kamara. Donovan Clingan is statistically one of the best rim protectors in the league. He's scoring over him. He's scoring over Kamara, drops 41. Then tonight, we at first there were some shades of like last postseason where you got Jaden McDaniels hounding him and smothering him. And Austin was still distributing the ball well, but it took him a little bit to get into his flow offensively in terms of his scoring. But he eventually cracks the code and he attacks different defenders. He's attacking McDaniels, but he's also attacking Dante DiVincenzo and Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert and just killing their bigs and switches yet again. And then, but I think that the biggest thing tonight for me was the passing, the 16 assists, tying his career high. It was just a masterful offensive performance from him. And again, really like factoring in the opponent and some of the demons that he dealt with specifically in that arena and against this group. Like it was a special evening from him. And then he caps it off with just a remarkable play where he calls up DeAndre Ayton for the screen. He splits the defense. He gets past McDaniels and Gobert. And before Gobert can really recover, he lofts in the floater at the buzzer over Dante DiVincenzo. And just the pace, the touch, the timing. It was just everything that has been so great with Austin to start this season was all on display. We talked about the contract all week. Just had the big episode yesterday with Daman, and I think that like mid to high 30s, I think that number continues to go up. And I think with each passing game, he is earning himself an extra $1 to $2 million. And I feel like that number is looking like it's probably going to have a 4, assuming that he can maintain this production. Of course not. He's not going to average 35 and 10 over the course of the regular season, but if he can have these types of performances when Luka and LeBron are out, and then scale down probably more to like 23 to 25 points per game, 7 to 8 assists per game, that is still a player that is worth $40 million, given all he is doing for this group. And it wasn't just that. I thought defensively, he had some nice possessions, although the Lakers defense down the stretch of this game was abysmal. And just another just insane performance from Austin. In terms of notable performers for the Lakers, starting with Austin, of course, again, 28 points, 9 of 24 shooting, like did not have a good shooting night, but I thought he still found ways to be effective. Not as many free throws, just 7 of 7, but only 3 turnovers compared to the 16 assists. So that to me was his shot did not fall. And I think there's some fatigue element here. He played 40 minutes tonight and they've been putting a lot on his plate, but the fact that he was still able to make mostly all the right reads and still find ways to impact the game, I thought was really encouraging. Then we have to give a major acknowledgement to Jake LaRavia, who broke out in a major way. 27 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 10 for 11 shooting, basically did not miss, 5 for 6 on threes. This was the Jake LaRavia that we saw on the film in the offseason. We've seen it against the Lakers. He's had several big performances against the Lakers through the years. And I actually think the biggest, so 17 points in the third quarter, which I will touch on in a second. That was huge. And that single-handedly kind of swung this game decidedly in the Lakers' favor. However, I thought Jake's defense was the unsung part of his performance tonight. And one thing in general that I've had a bit of an issue with the Lakers has been their ball pressure. And it feels like, I've kind of joked that they have this like force field at the 3-point line where guys, for whatever reason, don't want to cross the 3-point line to actually pressure people and get into them. And one of the advantages of watching games from home is being able to pause, rewind. And there was just in the first quarter alone, when you have the most energy, you're supposed to be setting a certain tone to a game. I'm going back and I'm looking at the Timberwolves defense and the Lakers defense. And the Timberwolves defense has been bad. They were 28th in defensive rating entering tonight. And certainly we saw the Lakers pick them apart at times tonight. But the Timberwolves were playing with a level of physicality. And it was like the second anyone was within 40 feet of the basket, there was an arm bar. There was someone touching them. And there was this level of pressure. And the Lakers just don't really play that way. And you saw the one clip where they have JJ in the timeout. He's talking about physicality and how the Lakers have to match Minnesota's physicality. They have to play more physical. They have to get into guys. play better up to touch. And I think for the most part, they did a pretty poor job of that. I think tonight they obviously benefited from no Ant Edwards, just like Minnesota benefited from no Luka and no LeBron, as well as no Marcus and no Gabe, and like down the list, Lakers are missing a bunch of players. But Minnesota, I think to some extent, like they have their own issues going on right now. The vibes have not been good with that group, and there's been some weird quotes in the media. They're now 2-3. They've lost twice to the Lakers, and like they're kind of going through it, but. I think there are other teams that will test the Lakers defense in a more serious way that are just better offensively and better executing offensively. And I think that's like one thing that I thought we saw it exacerbated down the stretch of this game, but the Lakers have to like sharpen up on the defensive end. And it's not just, yes, there are limitations. Yes, like JJ made the decision to go with Dalton over Jared Vanderbilt. So they were pretty limited defensively on the perimeter. But even within like the guys who are out there, you can still play with a certain level of physicality and actually getting into guys' jerseys and making them uncomfortable and putting some ball pressure on them. And I thought for the most part, they did not do that tonight. Now, Minnesota could barely dribble and pass, so that worked into the Lakers' favor. But I think a sharper offense, that like 4 to 5 minute sequence to close the game, I think there are far more sequences like that throughout the course of a game, and the Lakers like need to sharpen up on that end. However, I say all this to say Jake LaRavia was one of the few guys who I thought was actually getting into the ball, being physical. He picked up 5 fouls, but I thought most of them were good fouls. He had the funny one against Julius Randle that got reversed. But he was, whether it was Randle or whether it was McDaniels, Jake LaRavia was actually pressuring the ball, trying to funnel guys into certain spots and being physical. So people are going to look at the 27 points, and yes, he made 5 threes. Yes, he had 17 in the third, but I thought his defense, he was one of the few guys out there actually playing with some level of urgency and physicality on that end. And I wanted to give him his props for that. Then DeAndre Ayton, 17 points, 10 rebounds. He won the Gobert matchup again, and the Naz Reid matchup again, outperforming both of them combined. What a difference it makes for the Lakers to actually have a starting level center out there compared to what they previously had. Rui, 17 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. I think the decision-making overall has been progressing in a positive manner with Rui. I like seeing 4 assists from him. I do think he's probably the biggest culprit of, I thought he played way too far off of Julius Randle and like let him get into an early rhythm. And that's kind of like, I would like to see a little bit more urgency and ball pressure from Rui. I thought he was probably the person that in my mind, I was thinking of most of just like kind of playing a little passive defensively, but overall, like he continues to chip in 16, 17, 18 points. And that's all you can really ask for with who is out right now. Vando, rough offensive performance, but 6 offensive rebounds, 12 rebounds overall, 4 assists from him. Saw some of the short roll playmaking with him, a steal, 4 turnovers, and missing a 3. Again, he's got to just stop taking threes at this point. But defensive impact, like he's a banshee out there. He's making his presence felt. And then off the bench, Dalton Knecht, 11 points in the first half, 15 points overall. There is some there's a pulse on, I don't know if it's not an island. It's not Dalton Knecht Island. It's maybe Dalton Knecht Lake or something. But, there was mold growing and all the appliances were, just stopped working. And it was getting a little like musty and just like swampy. And people have come in and started to renovate it and clean stuff and get the electricity going again. And Dalton's looking more like an NBA level rotation guy. And we need to see this over a larger sample size, right? But I think putting together that second half against the Blazers into tonight's game, there's a lot of progress there. He's looking more assertive and confident offensively, and that's all you could really ask from him. He had a couple blocks. He had a steal. So I still don't think he's been good defensively, but he's been making some plays. And I think the general effort has been there more often than not. So that was a positive. Nick Smith Jr. came in and hit a floater and hit a 3 and still some rough passes from him and just like decisions out there. But I thought he came in and made a little bit of an impact. Jackson Hayes came back and was fouling everybody left and right, but gave the Lakers 13 hard minutes. And I thought pretty much a team effort all around for LA. And then in terms of stats of the night, I'm going to shout out the 16 assists from Austin, which matched his career best number. And then Jake LaRavia 17 points in the third quarter, which LA, like without that stretch, he won an 8-0 run himself. I think the Lakers, I don't know if they lose this game necessarily, but I think it's a much different game, right? Like LA got up 20 in the second half, and a big part of that was LaRavia's shooting and getting out in transition and getting to the free throw line, propelling that in a way that if he doesn't do that, I think is just a different game down the stretch. And then takeaway number one, before we get into our Q&A portion here, something I talked about with Daman and something he's been harping on that I really have enjoyed has been the notion of Lakers culture. And I thought JJ talked about this after the game and really highlighted it with like, this group is starting to come together. And there were certainly moments where it did not look that way, right? Like the Lakers did not, I think from a process perspective, have anywhere close to the ideal preseason with how many guys were in and out during practices, how many guys were in and out during games, the 1-5 start. And like, I didn't harp on it. Well, I harped on it a lot, but I didn't harp on like some of my concern in terms of just like looking at the Lakers through the last 5-6 years of there typically was a little bit of a correlation between how they played in the preseason and how they started the season. It didn't mean that's how the season would go necessarily, but typically like the groups, you remember the best example or the worst example is the 2021-22 group. They went 0-6 and then they had the season from hell. But even some of the other seasons, it was like they go 2-4 or 1-5 in the preseason, then they start 3-5 or whatever. And it's like just a subpar start to the season. So I was a bit concerned with that, but from the jump, really, like, Golden State was, I think, a rough debut, but since then, it's just been like nothing but I think positive vibes with this group. I think there's been a lot to be encouraged by, particularly with the offensive execution, but several guys stepping up every game in a way that like we haven't consistently seen before necessarily. I think JJ has more often than not pushed a lot of the right buttons with the rotation and his lineup decisions and the organization with the offense and just the way that the offense is humming. He's not been perfect, but I think he's largely been good. Austin has obviously taken another leap. Luka was incredible to start the season. I think Rui is largely played to or above expectations. Vando's had some good moments. DeAndre Ayton, I think, has been probably even above expectation, at least like to start the season. And so there's been just like a lot collectively that I think has gone right. And given who's been in and out and all the injuries and adversity they've already dealt with to start the year, being 3-2 against this schedule, I think feels like a real win. And beating Minnesota twice, winning the season series against Minnesota because they only play them one more time. It feels like the Lakers are starting to build something here. And this was easily a game that on the road, first night first game of a 2-game trip against a team you just beat last week. Yes, they're without Ant and you're obviously without Luka and LeBron, but like, it felt like a game that could have gotten away from them, and it did get away from them early, right? They trailed by 9 a couple times in that first quarter, and they bounced back. They had a level of resiliency, and that carried over into eventually taking the lead into halftime, and then taking a couple of massive leads in the second half before the late collapse that Austin saved them from. So I just think like there's been this kind of intangible thing with this group that I think has been encouraging to watch. And I just recorded an episode of Beyond the Block today with Jared Weiss, and we did our West power rankings, and I had the Lakers 4th in the West. And I know a lot of people have them lower. A lot of people have them as a 6 seed, 7 seed, 8 seed, whatever. But I've been really encouraged by what I've seen to start the season. And that was before even tonight's performance. And then takeaway number 2, I've already touched on some of these guys, but I do want to highlight several guys stepping up that, as Shaq likes to call them, the others, but several guys stepping up who had not really had these types of performances this season. Jake LaRavia, first and foremost, in the run that he went on in the third in his defense. But I thought Dalton was even though the numbers are relatively similar tonight compared to Portland, I thought he was far more impactful, and he played 36 minutes. He got the close. Like, I thought there was a real boost. Like, obviously he built off the Portland game, but there was a real boost with Dalton tonight compared to even the Portland game. And I mean, he had a really rough half in that, the first half in that Portland game. I thought he was much steadier overall tonight. Did make some defensive mistakes, and you know, offensively still just 1 for 5 on threes, and you'd like to see that fall a little bit more consistently, but he is being more comfortable in terms of attacking closeouts, getting downhill, getting to his midi, getting to the rim. So I think Dalton is trending in the right direction, at least for right now. And then I also mentioned Nick Smith. Like, they needed someone beyond the top 7 to do something. Bronny had a pretty quiet performance in 5 minutes, but Nick Smith came in and hit a couple shots, got to the free throw line. And again, I don't love the minutes with him as a lead ball handler or even secondary ball handler, but he at least gave a little bit of something tonight, which is like, that counts, and that helped LA get the win. And then final thing before we get into the Q&A, takeaway number 3, slew of injury updates. So Luka Doncic's finger sprain has decreased from, according to JJ Redick, from twice the size of his normal finger to about 1.5 times the size of his normal finger. So he is day-to-day. He did not make the trip out to Minnesota and is not expected to be in Memphis. But JJ said the Lakers are hoping he'll be back within the next couple of games. So it sounds like maybe that back-to-back he'll be back for. I'm not quite sure if it's going to be both games or if it's going to be, you know, maybe the front end and he rests the back end, or maybe he rests the front end, plays the back end. Based on it being a road back-to-back, it might make more sense for him to play the front end and then sit the road one if he's going to sit, but I don't yet have clarity on that. LeBron is still targeting second or third week of November, which checks out with basically everything we've heard. Adou Thiero is cleared to return to practice, and he was assigned to South Bay. But one clear thing with that, or one thing I want to make clear with that, is that he's cleared to resume on-court activity. Then there's like a little bit of a ramp-up process to 5-on-5. Then after that, he will return to actual action. So I still think we're probably another 7 to 10 days away from him potentially playing. So I just wanted to, like, it's not like he's going to be available. I would be pretty surprised if he's available, say, like this weekend. I think that would be premature based on the return to play protocol that they have him on. And it seems more like maybe next weekend is on the early side. And then Marcus Smart was obviously questionable for tonight, ended up being ruled out. And there's a chance he plays on Friday in Memphis, which is also an NBA Cup game. It kicks off the NBA Cup. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A. Braden, thank you for the super chat. Austin Reaves, that is all. That is all. That could. I love when you guys give me the analysis that I could have just saved the past 25 minutes and just said this. Like, this is it. This is the main thing to take away. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. AR just showed he has 35+ million Luka alternative. Also, Luka/AR just won't work. They both need the ball to be their best. AR can't show this one. PG Luka plays next to him. Luka trade. AR Giannis duo. I can't tell if you're being serious or not. I'm going to take this at face value because I know you, Keon, and you do ask good questions. I still think it's way too early to write off the Luka AR pairing. And as I've maintained now, basically going back to the moment these questions popped up, which was probably around playoff time, I've been saying I think the move here is to re-sign Austin at whatever the cost ends up being. And then if it really doesn't work the rest of this season, like you play out obviously the rest of this season. And if it really doesn't work over the regular season and it really doesn't work over the playoffs, you still re-sign Austin. And then you look to flip him next year and use that giant salary to get another big piece, whether that's a second co-star to match with Luka or another kind of similar level player to Austin, whatever. But I do not think it's flipping Luka for Giannis. I mean, like, Giannis is a much better player than AD, and we all obviously hoping for the best for AD right now based on whatever Achilles situation he's going through. We don't yet have clarity on that. But Giannis is almost like 5 years older than Luka. So I think from a timeline perspective, I would rather have Luka moving forward just straight up. And I think you don't just trade him for Giannis and get 5 years older, despite theoretically there being a better fit with Austin and Giannis. And maybe it's probably a cleaner fit. I don't know if it's a better fit. And I think we need more time to really assess this. But I think it's way too early to write off the Austin Luka pairing. And I think we still need more. Like, I become more bullish on Austin's ability to lead whatever unit he's going to lead with the second unit groupings. And then I also think like he has shown an ability to play off the ball with not just Luka, but with LeBron and AD. Like, it's not like Austin's not been this giant hub of offense for like his entire career. He's often been an off ball player and he's made it work. So I think this is I get why you're going here, but I think this is far too premature. Kerwin, trade Luka for Giannis, keep Reaves. Okay, so I guess this is a thing in the chat. I appreciate the super chat, but I'm going to disagree with this analysis. I really like basketball. Thank you for the super chat in parentheses, but he's not worth 35 million. Hashtag him sanity. With you have the meme of the capital letters and the lowercase letters. I want to. I want to quickly note on something. Like I really try to stay out of media discourse and criticism, but I saw people on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, saying that Kenny Smith was comparing Austin to Jeremy Lin and that this is like a Linsanity run. And that is just so misguided and incorrect and just not like the situation at all. Like, sure, is he gonna have a bunch of stretches of 51, 41 and then 16 assists? Like, no, this obviously is like very context based in terms of Luka and LeBron being out and him having to carry a certain load that for any player, like there are, with the exception of maybe like the top 5 players in the league can carry that type of workload. And, Luka's going to put that to the test when he comes back, but it's very like you can't have a player having this type of output and workload for a full season. It's just that there's a reason why no one averages 45 points a game. No one averages 16 assists per game, or maybe going back to like the Stockton Magic days. But to compare him to Jeremy Lin is just disrespectful and incorrect. And it shows you have not been paying attention to Austin Reaves and what he's been doing. Like, he averaged 25 and 5 last season for a full season. And that was with AD and LeBron and Luka at various points and in and out of the lineup in different configurations and stuff. Like, I think that is an insane take. And I don't know if I haven't seen the clip yet, so I don't know if he was saying it in jest or like kind of playfully, but if that was like a serious opinion or a serious comparison, that's just really, really bad analysis. Lee Baggy, thank you for the super chat. How about them Lakers? 3-2. They proved me wrong. I said I thought they were going to go 1-3 without Luka, or 2-4. Technically 2-4 is still on the table, but I would not bet on that. I think they have a real shot to win against Memphis on Friday, and then there's a chance Luka's back for that back-to-back. So at a minimum, they're going to go 2-2 without him, and maybe they go 3-1. Maybe they go 4-1 or 5-1. Like that's certainly in play. So yeah, the Lakers are the turnovers against the Blazers notwithstanding, and the end of this game notwithstanding, it's been a really impressive stretch for LA. Tanner Lawson, thank you for the super chat. Jovan with the huge 27 tonight. Appreciate you. I was waiting for this. I got a bunch of tags on Twitter from a bunch of people congratulating me on my breakout performance. It's been rough couple weeks. I've been hearing it from Lakers fans. I know they've been in my DMs upset with me, but it was time to go show why I got that $6 million deal. And now life is good. Ernesto, thank you for the Super chat. What is the absolute max the Lakers can pay AR? I'm not 100% on this. I'm like 98% on this. It's like 42 or 42.5 million starting out. So with the different raises, that's obviously likely going to be an increasing number. So I don't know the sum off the top of my head, but it depends on, well, even like anytime you technically sign a contract, it's based on projections, and those numbers can fluctuate depending on where the salary cap ultimately comes in future seasons. But with the typical like 8 to 10% raises, I think it's 8% raises, he would be whatever's 42. I mean, he could sign something. I would guess the average annual value actually probably comes in closer to 50 million, which is going to be a lot for some people to handle when you're talking about like 42.5 plus an 8% bump, plus an 8% bump, plus an 8% bump, and that being like a 4 or 5 year deal. So, I mean, it could end up being 5 years, low 200 millions. I think that's not out of play here. And there's also different, like they could technically, because the Lakers, salary cap situation is structured a certain way right now. There's maybe a path to them having a descending contract or like a neutral contract where it's like the same amount. But it feels like it wouldn't really make sense for him to have a descending, because then now you're going into like the 30s below 42 and 42.5. Maybe you could talk him into a like neutral contract, but I think it's going to be more realistically, like at a minimum, him starting in the high 30s, if not around that 42.5 number. So we'll see. Like there's still a lot of time left. We're 5 games into the season, but I said it at the top, and I sincerely mean this. Like whatever number you thought Austin was at, he is adding like $1 to $2 million per game over these last 3 games. So if you thought he was a $30 million player, I think it's at least in the mid 30s. If you thought it was mid 30s, he's around 40. Like he's getting up there. Sarah, thank you for the super chat. LaRavia was the unsung hero tonight. Needed that. Yes. He was huge. And like, they don't, again, I don't want to like rewrite. I don't like changing one thing with a game and then you rewrite like the course of the game. But as I said earlier, I think it's a dramatically different game if Jake doesn't have the performance he had in the third quarter, because again, Austin's shot wasn't quite falling tonight at the level that we're accustomed to. He wasn't getting to the free throw line as much. I thought Jake, in tandem with Austin, like they had several hit ahead passes and connections in the half court with kick out passes, skip passes. But that 2-man synergy was really important, particularly in the third quarter. But I also mentioned like Jake's defense, I thought was pivotal tonight. And Chrissy 13, thank you for the super chat. Flying in from Vancouver, Canada for Sunday's game versus Miami. Think Luka will play. Will you be there? Would be cool to say what's up if you are. I will be there on Sunday against Miami, and I don't yet. It sounds like it's in play for Luka to play, so I don't want to misguide you and tell you that he is going to play and then he doesn't play. I would say right now, my guess would be he's probable for that game, and that would put him at, the designations are obviously you're 100%, probable 75%, questionable is 50%, doubtful is 25%. I would assume as of right now, unless there are any setbacks, he's probable going into the Miami game, which would put the odds of him playing as more likely than not. He'll have to go through his pregame warm up and just make sure the finger and the leg contusion are fine and not going to bother him for that game. I don't know if he's going to play in the back-to-back yet. I would have a little bit of caution with that one, or a little bit of skepticism, but I think that there's a greater than 50% chance he plays on Sunday. But again, like with the Lakers, you never know if there's like the tiniest setback, they might just be cautious and keep him out. So especially with how they're playing, right? Like if they beat Memphis and they go to 4-2, you don't need to rush him back. Obviously you want him back as soon as possible, but you don't like need to force it if you don't have to. But I think there's a decent chance he plays on Sunday, and I will be there. So if you're in Discord, hit me up on Discord or hit me up on probably on Instagram is the other best place. What does it matter, bruh? What one of the best handles in the game. Thank you for the super chat. Most important thing to come out of this game is JL will pay dividends later. Rui got to be one of the worst screen navigators in the league. He also got fried by every forward on Minnesota. Get him off my team. You're coming in with a little bit of the harsh analysis on Rui. I don't disagree with the off-ball defense, the screen navigation, and the overall on-ball defense tonight. It's interesting too because he's actually defended Julius like reasonably well. I don't think he defended him well in the playoffs. Like he had some good stretches against him, but overall, obviously Julius was arguably the third best player in that series. I thought like you can make that case depending on how you want to rank things. But yeah, tonight what was rough for Rui defensively. And with Jake, like this was one of the things I highlighted when we found out Luka was going to miss the stretch, was just that there's going to be different guys that step up, and putting guys in different positions and allowing them to showcase more of their skill set and to test their boundaries within the Lakers. Like we often think about it on the offensive end, but even just Jake, like being out there and being like a bit of a stopper for them tonight at times or certain possessions. Like I think that, to your point, does pay dividends later on. And that is, as JJ likes to call it, a reference point that if Jake's going through a stretch where he's maybe struggling 3 or 4 games, not shooting the ball well, not playing as much, like this is a reference point where JJ can point to it and be like, look at the way you were defending in the second half of this game. Look at this third quarter that you had. Look at this overall performance you had. And that could be something that could be a nice reminder that gets him going again. Alejandro, thank you for the super chat. Credit to JJ for rallying this team while only having 9 players available. Connect is waking up. Maybe. Yeah, I think JJ deserves a lot of credit. I know people were bringing out the pitchforks for him with the timeout situation, which ended up working out. I think you can quibble with the process of whether they should have called a timeout or not, but like the result was the result and they won the game and he drew up a great play. It did seem like a similar play, but maybe we didn't get to see the play out to fruition because Rudy Gobert did the intentional foul on Austin. So JJ went back to the drawing board and mixed it up a bit. But yeah, I thought, getting the, like, again, there's just like these things that you can't really quantify, and getting these guys to believe and have a level of resiliency that I don't know if the Lakers, like, certainly not the first couple months of the season, right? Like they had some rough losses. I think of the Miami game, but the group last year did not start the season. They did start the season well. Remember that they had the 3-0 start, but I felt like that group didn't handle adversity that well. And like when they got punched in the mouth in the first like 1.5 months of the season, there were several instances in which they folded. And I don't think this group folded. Like I think there was a lot of execution errors in the Golden State game that showed the rustiness and this group just not having a lot of reps together. And then I also think that like the Portland game, they were literally missing half of their roster, literally missing half of their rotation, and not just the rotation, but 4 of their top 5 ball handlers, and everything flowed through Austin against one of the best defenses in the league on the second night of a back-to-back after traveling. So it wasn't like a home or like back-to-back in the same city. Sometimes you'll see like a baseball style series. No, this was, yes, LA and Sacramento is not far. It's especially on a jet, it's a 45-minute flight, but still you're traveling and it messes with things. So I thought that was like not the result the Lakers wanted, but still like a step in the right direction with how limited they were. And then tonight was just a continuation of, they only added Jackson, right? And they lost Christian Coloco and they still won. And so that's, I think, a big testament to JJ. With Dalton, I want to see more, right? Like but I do want to give him his credit, right? Because there's not been a lot of optimism. There's not been a lot of hope around Dalton. There's not been a lot to be encouraged by. And the fact that he's shown some flashes over the last like 6 quarters, he deserves his flowers. Rich, thank you for the super chat. I screamed so loud, my dog started barking and my wife screamed at me. I'm removing her from the Lakers. I love that. And I love that we could see your dog, and your dog is adorable here. Is that a golden doodle with a Lakers bandana? So your dog's a Lakers fan. Your dog is a part of Lakers Nation, but that is great. I unfortunately had the results spoiled for me because I have tweet notifications on, and for some people, and I got the for people at the game, I got the Austin Reaves just hit a game winner, so I at least knew that was happening, and then it was just a matter of like how it happened. But I wish there was some video evidence of this. Brent, thank you for the super chat. Doesn't this skyrocket his trade value for a possible trade for a better all-star fit for Luka? Seems like a good option for now, or a good option now. Yes and no. I think there are two hurdles with trading Austin that I have continually tried to contextualize here. One is just the contract. He's making $14 million. So can you package that with Rui and get into the low 30s? Yes. Can you package that with Gabe? Can you package that with Kleba? And that's now like, with Gabe or Kleba, that's now in like the mid 20s. Can you package it maybe with all three of those guys? And so you're offering 2 expirings plus Austin. That gets you into like mid to high 30s. Yes, that is all possible. But how many guys in that actual range are upgrades on Austin? We could go through the list. We could debate it. I don't think there are many. And I don't think there are many in like a straight up sense of, if you're just trading the Austin contract straight up, maybe you're throwing in Dalton or a little bit of filler. There are not many guys as good as Austin making $14 million. Like most of them are rookies. Like if there are, they're like rookie scale, like Victor Wembanyama or someone of that ilk, right? That you're not getting for Austin. So it's either like rookie scale studs who are already entrenched as foundational building block pieces for their franchises, or you have to package him with other players, which you can do, and you can do Austin and Rui or Austin and one of the other expirings. But I still think even then, if you're getting into a player in the 20s or a player in the 30s, like I think Austin's value and most of the guys you'd want to trade Austin for are probably guys in the 40s or 50s. And it's really hard for the Lakers to put the contracts together. I guess there's a way you could do Austin, Rui, and one of those other expirings. But now you have to think about it from like a transactional perspective of, if you're trading 3 guys or maybe even 4 guys, the other team has to have the roster flexibility to take on those guys. And like, so now if they're sending out 3 or 4 guys, maybe they have an extra roster spot so they could absorb one, but they're going to have to send out at least 2, if not 3 guys, depending on the configuration. And now that's also like lowering the amount of money the Lakers could take back from the primary guy. So it gets pretty complicated. And I just don't think there's like a clear guy out there who makes sense within the constraints of Austin's contract situation. The other big hurdle is, if you're trading for Austin, you're trading for Austin to keep Austin. And there's no assurance that you will be keeping Austin if you trade for him, because Austin wants to be in LA. He wants to remain a Laker. He wants to play his entire career here. If he gets traded, I don't think he's all of a sudden going to transfer that loyalty to that situation. And maybe the situation's great, and maybe he balls out. Maybe he's the number 1 option. Maybe he's the clear number 2 option. We don't know what team that would be. We can theorize and whatever, but like, there's no assurance that Austin stays. So you are taking on a level of risk as a potential team of, we give a star up for Austin, or maybe we give the Lakers a motherload offer with like multiple picks or something, and we get Austin, then he could just walk in the offseason and pick the situation. And I think like certainly that team could offer him a compelling contract that maybe gets him to stay, but there's going to be other suitors. And I don't think Austin, I do think he's a loyal guy at heart, but I think in that scenario, he would be foolish to not test free agency, to not test his options. And I've already said, like, my understanding is if he's in a different situation, like he is going to look ahead toward free agency. So like they can kind of play that a certain way too, like him and his, camp. So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, but I don't. It's funny that like half of these comments have been either trade Luka or trade Austin. I think like let's keep them together for now and see where it goes before we decide to move either one of them. If you're the Lakers. Shabugan, thank you for the super chat. Lakers win. Dalton and LaRavia come to life, united on a win streak. Liverpool loses to Palace and crashes out of the cup. Good sports week. I'm sure you just upset like half of the chat with some of these, but yeah, certainly for the Lakers, right? Like Dodgers, rough. They lost tonight and now they're down 3-2 to the Blue Jays, but Austin Reaves saved it for some LA fans. Light him up. Thank you for the super chat. If AR gets around his max, he's due. How much does that impair their ability with the cap to sign other pieces onto the roster? It really comes down to LeBron. That's the big swing factor here is what happens with LeBron, whether he retires. It's either he stays, he leaves, or he retires. And in two of those three, that's 50 plus million off the books. And that gives the Lakers a certain amount of flexibility. If he stays, also then depends on what number that is. And I would be surprised if it's the max, but I don't want to like speculate or give a projection of what I think it will be. I think LeBron, if he has the season I think he's going to have, he will ask for the max and he will deserve the max. Will that be with the Lakers? I don't know. But I think LeBron is the big swing factor here. But there's other swing factors with Rui is extension eligible till the 30th. You got DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart with their player options. You got Gabe and Maxey. I would assume Maxey, if he's back, it's probably as a minimum guy. Like I don't see a world in which he's making more than the minimum. But Gabe, what happens with Gabe? What happens with Rui? What happens with Ayton? What happens? Like, there's just so many dominoes that it's hard to say. Like, we could go through different scenarios. That there is a scenario in which they have the cap space to add another impact free agent or trade for one. I think trading is probably more likely. Although, then again, some of these contract situations make it potentially tricky to make a trade, or at least make a trade in the summer versus next season. I really think next season is probably more likely the time that they can make a bigger move if they're going to make a bigger move. But I mean, like Austin's contract will certainly play a role here, but I think the bigger factor will be, is LeBron back at 40 million? Is LeBron back at 50 million? Is LeBron back at 30 million? Is LeBron back at all? Does DeAndre Ayton opt out and ask for more money? Does Marcus Smart opt out and ask for more money? Do the Lakers extend Rui? Like there's all these factors that I think will play in. Those to me are bigger factors than like, is Austin making 42 or 38? Like, yes, that 4 million will factor into all this, but I think the bigger thing will be there's several other dominoes that I think are a little bit bigger. If we're penciling in Austin as like he's going to stay, it's just a matter of what that number is. I think there's specifically LeBron, Ayton, and Rui are probably the three I look at. Of those will go a long way in determining how much cap space they have. Sebastian, thank you for the super chat. Should dump Nick Smith already. We're not using the hardship. And thoughts on Timmy. Drew Timmy, who is now with South Bay. I like Drew Timmy, and I know he had a good stint with Brooklyn. I don't know, like, is he better than Christian Koloko? I know he's put up some monster G League numbers, but I don't have an answer to that. I would like to see what he looks like with South Bay before making a read there. I do trust South Bay and the Lakers scouting department to uncover gems. They always have a competitive group and there's always guys that are call up worthy. So I expect Timmy to be one of those guys. And if the Lakers shuffle through some two-way options, I think Timmy is a guy that could get a look. With Nick Smith, I think I'm trending the same way. I've honestly been like relatively underwhelmed with all of their two-way guys. Like we didn't see Mannion tonight. We didn't see Koloko. You guys know I have a soft spot for Koloko, but it just, for whatever reason, he has not really gained the trust of the coaching staff, and they've had a really quick hook with him. And in last year, I thought there were stretches where he outplayed or matched Jackson and brought a different element as a rim protector that, for whatever reason, he just was kind of buried within the rotation. And then they'd go to trade Jemison, and he ultimately won out between, he and Jemison by continuing to be a two-way guy. But I don't really know where that situation is headed. And then Magnon, we've seen just in a couple of short stints. Obviously, he's coming off the ankle injury, so maybe that's factoring in here of Lakers are trying to be careful with it. I like to see a little bit more from him. I like the defense that I've seen, but as we've seen with several Lakers players over the last few years, like you need to be able to do more than just defend. You need to be an offensive threat to like some baseline level, and I just don't yet know where he's at with that. In terms of Nick Smith, yeah, I mean, obviously coming off of being a late first round pick, a guy that the Lakers had interest in back in 2023, I was like, it piqued my interest and I thought there was some upside there. I've been largely underwhelmed. I don't like, I think he's had some flashes and I thought tonight was a relative flash, but like, he is not like, I'll say, I think he's been better than Bronny, all things considered, from the preseason through this point, but Bronny has a guaranteed contract and that's not going to change. So even though this would be different if they're both on 2-way contracts and then that's more of a competition. But I just think for what we've seen so far, it's hard to justify him maintaining this 2-way contract much longer. Now, maybe this is a turning point for him. Maybe he starts to play better. But he's put up numbers in the NBA. That's kind of the weird thing is like, he has been a guy who he can score and he can pass and he's been a offensive contributor. Or we haven't really seen it with the Lakers so far. Which leads us to the next one from Quinn. Is Bronny cooked? I don't think Bronny's cooked. I just think that like ideally progress is linear. And I thought, there's some ups and downs to start last season, mainly downs. Then he started to play much better at the G League level. And I thought it translated in the limited minutes he played in garbage time and stuff at the NBA level. Like, again, like relatively, I'm not, it was just especially compared to how he looked in the beginning of the season. I thought if you look at Bronny in November or December compared to Bronny in March and April, night and day player at the G League level, but also with the parent team. I thought we saw some progress as well in Summer League. I think my personal read on the situation and opinion, and I know LFR has been big on this, Pete Zayas has been big on this, and I wholeheartedly agree with him. I think they're grooming him the wrong way. I think they're trying to make him an on-ball shot creator and playmaker. And I think he profiles to me more as a secondary on-ball creator, playmaker, and more of a defense. The comparisons he had coming in, Avery Bradley, Davion Mitchell, Pat Beverly, Marcus Smart, like that type of player, not saying not to that level necessarily, but that kind of build and that prototype. And we have seen him be groomed and kind of positioned far more on the offensive end. And I just don't think the shot has been there. I don't think the passing has been there. I don't think the decision-making has been there. And it just feels like, in my opinion, it's going to sound wild because I know for some, this is going to sound wild, but like, I don't think he's really been put in a position to succeed in part. Like, yes, there's obviously been certain concessions made to try to develop him and to prop him up, right? To be clear. But I think they're trying to form him into something that I don't know if that's going to be his future ultimately. And I think when you look at his physical gifts and his size and what, like I've talked about this before, it's really hard to be under 6'5" in the modern NBA. You either need to be an all-star level shot creator, playmaker, which I think is clearly not him, at least not right now, or you need to be an all defense, like hounding guys 94 feet type defender. And that's also not him. But I think between those two paths, the defensive one is far more likely than the offensive one. So I do not think he's cooked. I still think there's upside here. And I think he really just needs a lot more time with South Bay to develop. And we're probably like, he's definitely a year away from potentially being a rotation guy. And that's potentially is the key word there. But he needs a year with South Bay, another year to develop. I just think they're trying to position him in a way that's not really to his skill set, in my opinion. Is it Damian? I've not seen this name before, but you are Slovenian, so I like the name. That's a cool name. Jovan, hi from Slovenia. Luka and AR are the future of the Lakers. How many guys from the current roster do you see in the future in the Lakers jersey? Good question. It's tough. Again, I think it's tough to say without knowing what happens with LeBron. But among this group, if I had to predict the most likely Lakers to be on next year's team, in no particular order, I would say, I think DeAndre Ayton, Rui, honestly, probably Jackson, because of it, he's got a really good relationship with Luka. Jake LaRavia, and we're saying around Luka and Austin, so Luka and Austin are baked in. But Ayton, Rui, Jackson, LaRavia, Marcus, Vanda. I mean, yeah, those are probably the 6 guys I would say, and with some flexibility there with Ayton and Rui, depending on the free agency situations. Marcus, to a lesser extent, I think he probably opts in, especially if he's not healthy for some of this season. Adou Thiero also deserves a nod. I think Vando's contract is still going to be tough to move. Thiero and Dalton, it's more to do with like age, and I didn't mention Dalton. I think Dalton's still. We'll see what happens at the trade deadline. But yeah, I would say those are so Ayton, Rui, Jackson, Jake, Marcus, Adou, Vando. I think those are probably the 7-ish guys that are most likely to be back. In part, some of those guys are just on under contract for next year, but I think I have less confidence in, Kleba's a pending free agent, and I think he's more of a minimum guy, but I don't even know if he's a roster guy at this point anymore. We have to see. LeBron, I don't know what he wants to do yet. Gabe, I think, could be someone who gets traded. Same with Maxey. So yeah, I would say like I wouldn't be surprised if most of this group is back next season with some changes, but LeBron is obviously the big swing factor. Connor Phillips, thank you for the super chat. 3 clutch killers on the team, very hard to guard late. Yeah, I think going back, like we saw this at times last season, I think this is going to be a really difficult crunch time offense to guard. The Lakers won a lot of close games last year. That's why statistical models don't like the Lakers, because the Lakers outperform their net rating and their projected or like estimated record. So they won several more, the net rating and like implied record. And so because of that, people are going to be a little bit like those in the analytics community are going to be a little bit lower because they're going to say the Lakers overperformed. And certainly there was maybe some overperforming last season. However, they have, to your point, 3 clutch killers, guys who can take and make big shots and big plays for each other, for themselves, for their teammates. And I think it's a great problem to have. And I think they're going to be one of the best clutch teams in the league. And we already have a clutch win under the books. Bowen, thank you for the super chat. My friend says AR is with defensive liabilities, similar with Luka. Also, he says that AR runs out of gas in the playoffs. He says Lakers need a perimeter defender and a 3-and-D player. Help, how do I respond? Well, you've come to the right place. I will give you some talking points. One, the Lakers do need a perimeter defender and 3-and-D player. I have maintained that I think the ideal fit starter / fifth closer is not on this team. I think it needs to be someone who is better defensively than Rui and better offensively than Marcus Smart and Jared Vanderbilt. So I agree that, in my opinion, the Lakers still are I've been saying this since the summer, and I said it in my mailbag. I was asked to do a bold prediction. I think the Lakers are a trade away from being right there with OKC and Denver for co-favorites to come out of the West. And I think some people will think that's crazy, but I think with the right trade, if they nail that player and that player is next to Luka, Austin, LeBron, and DeAndre Ayton, I think they can compete with anybody in a playoff series. Austin has ran out of gas in the play. I think he's actually more so ran out of gas to close seasons. So I actually think it starts a little bit before the playoffs, but certainly affects him going into the playoffs. And that is something that he has worked on over the offseason, trying to get stronger, trying to get, like I said at the time when JJ had the championship shape comment that I believed, one, it was more than just being in physical shape. I thought there was like a mental component, an emotional component that the Lakers, in my opinion, and I think it was just kind of obvious, like they lost their composure in that Minnesota series. They unraveled, they got in their heads a bit. They overreacted to certain things. And like there was just key stretches of that series where Minnesota was calm and poised, or if they were fiery, they channeled it in the right way. And the Lakers were way too reactive and just kind of not ready for the moment. And Austin, that applies to him as well. But I also thought from a championship shape perspective, everyone looked at Luka, but I thought Austin was another guy who could have been in better shape. And I think he is someone who looks to be in better shape to start this season. So I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell your friend what Austin is going to do in the playoffs or how he's going to look. I think this is another reason why the Lakers have to be a little bit careful with putting too much on his plate over the course of an 82-game season. But so far, he has held up. And despite being tired against Portland, he dropped 41. Despite being tired tonight, he dropped 28 and 16. Like it's dude's just passing every test left and right against elite defenses. And then defense liability with him and Luka. I think honestly, both Austin and Luka are better defensively than they're given credit for. I think Luka, the blow-bys in the playoffs were rough, and I forgot who said it, so I want to give them credit, but someone said that they feel like they invented blow-by percentage just to make Luka look bad defensively because it's specifically been used with Luka. And it was something I had never heard of until like a year or two ago. So I found it interesting that it's been specifically used in the context of trying to make Luka's defense look bad. And look, it's been an issue, right? And I thought it was an issue in the Minnesota series where when Luka would be making rotations, whoever was the weak side guy, especially Jaden McDaniels, but sometimes DiVincenzo, sometimes Nickeil Alexander-Walker, sometimes Julius Randle, of course, Ant, and he just blew by everybody. Luka got blown by a lot in that series, and he committed himself this offseason to getting into better shape. And I think the defense, he's held up on an island against Golden State, against Minnesota. Like, I think it's not been like good defense, but I would say he's been around average to even above average for stretches to start this season. With Austin, I think he's a good team defender, and I think he's actually fine to solid against most guards. It's just when he gets switched onto a bigger player, they're going to plow through him. And a McDaniels, a Randall, a Jokic, like those guys are like, he can't really scale up. There is a limitation to his versatility defensively, but last year he was second in the league in charges. So like the notion that he's not an impact defender, he had the best one-on-one matchup data against Ant compared to anyone else on the Lakers last year. Like in the playoffs, it just, I think AR, his mistakes can be loud, and you will remember the bigger player just plowing through him and scoring and getting the N1, but you don't necessarily remember the charges or the rotations that force an extra swing pass that then there's a shot clock or like a late shot, late clock attempt. He has a lot of subtleties to his defensive game that I think you have to really watch on film. But to be clear, there are defensive concerns with Austin and Luka. I don't want to claim that there are not. There are real concerns, and I think there are real limitations, and you have to build the rest of the lineup a certain way. But I would tell your friend that they're both better defensively than he thinks. Austin, TBD on if he runs out of gas. And the Lakers do need a better perimeter defender and 3D player, but they still have the assets to go get that player. Brent, thank you for the super chat. I think the trade talk is happening because some Laker fans worry Luka and AR aren't a good fit to build around. Do we need more athleticism and D? Again, I don't think we have enough of a sample size, though, because they only played 20-something games together last year. They've played 2 games together this year. They're 1-1. I'm not going to include the preseason. We don't know, right? So I think it's one. If the Lakers lose in round 1 and Austin struggles, or they're just picked apart defensively, and it's clear like the Austin Luka tandem does not work together on the floor, it's too much to overcome, I will come on here and I will change my tune, and we will have the conversation of what are the next steps. Okay, re-sign Austin, flip him next season. that's like the order of operations. But I think we're a ways away from having that conversation, and there's still so much left of the season that I get why some fans are thinking this way. But I think coming off of tonight, there should be some more optimism. There should be some more feel good vibes. It shouldn't be so doom and gloom with like splitting up your two franchise cornerstones right now. There's certainly a chance they don't work out. I'm not delusional into thinking that like it's a for sure perfect partnership. There are some clear warts. Like both guys are better with the ball in their hands. I think Austin is adaptable to play off the ball, but like we're starting to see he looks better with the ball. And then there's the defense and the rebounding and the athleticism collectively with some of the lineups. I think in general, the Lakers do need more athleticism and defense. I think in some ways, like, some people aren't going to love this, but like they kind of need the Dallas front court. If they had Lively and Gafford at center, and like PJ Washington and Derek Jones, like I'm talking like 2024, you put those three guys next to Luka and Austin, and I think that's a really good fit. You need size, length, and defense around those two. Z26A1B2C3. I appreciate it. Thank you for becoming a member. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. Next summer, do you think AR would let the front office do whatever they need to do and then give AR a new contract, or AR gets paid first, then do others later? If front office can pay AR only 30, but AR wants 35 plus, would he accept 30 or leave for more? Couple of good questions here. So in terms of order of operations, there's a thing called cap hold, which for, you retain the rights to your free agents. And so you don't, because if you have, I don't want to go too into the intricacies here, but to kind of like keep it relatively brief and surface level, like certain players you have bird rights for. So you can go above the cap, you can go into the cap, you could go into the first apron, second apron, whatever, to retain certain guys. Obviously you got to be careful with the aprons and how you want to approach that. But because teams, there could be a hack where you just like sign a bunch of players and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to spend into the second apron or past it or whatever with the guys that I have bird rights on because that's allowed. There are these things called cap holds, which are a number attributed to each player that is predetermined that counts against the cap unless you renounce their rights. And then if you renounce their rights, depending on if you're above or below the minimum threshold, then you get assigned empty roster charges, which are like a basic minimum roster charge. So point being, I believe Austin's cap hold is going to be less than his projected salary. So I think the shrewd move actually for the Lakers would be to do some of these things first and then sign Austin a little bit later. So do some of the action first in terms of deciding on a Rui, deciding on an Ayton, deciding on a LeBron. Let some of those things play out over the first few days and then sign Austin and having that cap hold be a little bit lower to have a little bit more flexibility. Because if you come out of the gate and sign him first, then, I mean, you could technically agree to terms and then wait to sign him. But realistically, the cap hold is going to factor in. So I think the shrewd move is actually probably letting it play out a little bit. Like, obviously, you got to be above board with Austin and be very transparent and like, hey, this is the plan. This is what we're trying to do. This is why there's a delay in, officially signing you or whatever. But depending on how things play out, it could make sense to delay signing him for a little bit. And I think as long as Austin's getting his money, it shouldn't be an issue. Now, 30 versus 35, I think it depends on what's out there. Again, I don't want to be too reactionary here, but I do think 30 is starting to feel low, especially if you look at a lot of the guys in the 30 to 35 range. I think the version of Austin we're seeing is clearly better than basically all of them. I think 35 might be the floor right now. And it's maybe a matter of, is it 35 or is it 40 or is it like 37 or is it 42? That I don't have great clarity on. I think he would, my understanding of his feelings, and I obviously don't want to speak for him, but like, I think there could be a potential hometown discount. A slight one is $5+ million. Is that too much? I don't know. And I do think there's I think there's a little bit more of a difference between 30 versus 35 than like 35 versus 40. I know it's technically 5, but like from a status perspective, 35 puts you in a certain class that 35 doesn't quite. Again, I know it's semantics, but if you look at the caliber of player that's at 35 plus, there is a bit of a gap jump or you know, in status and tier and like who's making that. So that I don't know, but I think again, we have a ways to go till we decide, or till the Lakers decide on what he's worth. Z2 6A1 B2 C3, new member. How are you feeling about Dalton's defense? Seems like he has improved on that end. I think the effort and anticipation has been better. I think he's making more athletic plays on that end, and that is a step in the right direction. I think the awareness has improved as well. I still think off-ball defense, chasing guys around screens, making certain rotations and reads were problematic. Like even on that last play, or it might have been LaRavia actually. But maybe I'm mixing up Dalton and Jake. I think Randall got LaRavia on the final play where he scored, but I think there was a play he had a couple drives late that one of them, he just went right at Dalton, and it was almost like Dalton just wasn't there. So, you know, I think he's a guy that could stand to play with a little bit more physicality and aggression on that end. And he is a guy, it's interesting. I think it's both him and Rui. They are so athletic on the offensive end, and you see this level of physicality. Like even Rui now, I think he's gotten far more physical, where he will he's bumping guys for middies, he's bumping guys attacking the rim, and he had a nice finish through traffic tonight. But that same like agility and physicality and athleticism just doesn't really translate to the defensive end for whatever reason. It's like I feel like Rui is at least a 7, if not an 8 by like NBA standard, maybe a 7 athletically, offensively. And then he's like a 4 defensively. And Dalton has got some athletic, like we've seen him dunk on people. We've seen him get up around the basket. And so again, it's hard to kind of attribute an athletic number to these guys, but like Dalton is also another guy who's maybe like a 7 athletically, offensively, and then he's like a 3 defensively. And I think we're starting to see a little bit more from him, but for whatever reason, the defense, like what makes him excel offensively has not really translated to the defensive end. But I want to give him credit. He's had now, I think I have it here, 3 steals and 3 blocks over his last 2 games. So that's real. Like that's something to scoff at. So I still think there are a lot of mistakes in areas of improvement, but he's playing better defensively. It's undeniable. Next one from Gary Singh. Thank you for the super chat. Lakers need to work on matching up on defense. Randall scored because Ayton was guarding Conley. They need to be more aware of matching up correctly. That's a really good point. And this is what kills them in transition, is just a general lack of urgency and lack of awareness of who they're guarding. And, you know, how like the transition defense, it's actually had some pretty good moments, I will say, to like start this year in particular, post preseason. The preseason was horrendous. Tonight, they were outscored 14-13 in transition, but looking at the Portland game, they outscored Portland 19-9. So like they've been winning transition, or at least holding their own more often than not. I thought tonight there was actually a lot of really good transition hit aheads and getting out, getting fouled, getting deep seals against smaller Timberwolves defenders. So offensively, it's trending in the right direction. Defensively, still a work in progress, and totally agree. I mean, look, if they lost this game, and this is where process and results, it's a fine line sometimes, but if they lost this game, we were going to have to do a Zapruder film breakdown of all of the defensive disaster class that the final 4 minutes were. Instead, Austin saved them, and it's a totally different show. Sham, thank you for the super chat. AR, 3rd best shooting guard in Lakers history behind Goodrich and Baylor. How can you say that with a Kobe profile icon? Come on, man. No, but obviously behind Kobe, Goodrich, and Baylor. Although Baylor's kind of in, like, to me, he's almost like a 2-3 a little bit. But we could put him at the 2 for argument's sake. Jerry West, I'd put more at the 1, although he's also kind of a hybrid 1-2. I mean, I'd love to know in the chat what you guys think. A lot of trolling ones tonight for whatever reason, but hey, I appreciate the super chats. But let me know who are some other Lakers. I mean, like, you know, I did the top 25 ranking over the past 25 years, and the only shooting guard I had above Austin was Kobe. I mean, Eddie Jones had a stretch there in the mid 90s, but I think Austin has surpassed that, though Eddie Jones was an all-star. All right. Professor Tech Nerd, Byron Scott. Sean Parker says he misses Shannon Brown, but obviously not above AR. Amara says AR needs a ring to be considered a legend. For sure. And that's where, like, okay. Sham clarifies, no, I'm saying his comp is Goodrich and Baylor. Got you. Okay. Thank you for clarifying. I think the chat was going wild. So, I mean, some of the positional designations of some of the old guys of whether it's West, Goodrich, Baylor, you know, one of those guys, 2 of those guys could be considered shooting guards. Obviously, Kobe's number 1. I would say Austin. It's hard to say, especially when you have guys who have won championships, and that's the Lakers standard, right? Like, every retiree in terms of retired jersey won a championship, and there's a certain standard there. But I mean, he's knocking on the top 5 if he's not there already. And then I think depending on where he ends up, obviously, like, how long is he a Laker? How many championships does he win? That's just the standard of the organization. Connor Phillips, thank you for the super chat. People said Luka plus Kai wouldn't work either. It takes time. That's a good point. And remember, Luka and Kyrie had that weird close to the season after. I know they dealt with, like, injuries and stuff, but not the close to the first half season that Kyrie got there. If I'm not mistaken, that was what, 2022, 23. So, like, overall, they finished 38-44. I believe they missed the play-in, right? If I'm not mistaken, definitely missed the playoffs. And then the next year, they're the 5 seed and win the championship. So I think this takes time. And to be clear, I'm not putting Austin on Kyrie's level. I think he's obviously playing at that level right now, but I think, like, Kyrie is Kyrie. He's arguably the best ball handler of all time. He's a champion, hit one of the biggest shots in NBA history. I want to give him his respect and, you know, just acknowledgement there. But I think the general sentiment is that with Luka and Kyrie, it took a little bit of time. And with Austin and Luka and LeBron and Luka, it's probably going to take a little bit of time, although they still won at like a 60% rate. So it's like, they've still been pretty good. Like, I know, horrible playoff, you know, first round series, but they closed the season really strong. They had a bunch of statement wins. They've had a good start to this season. Let's, like, take things one day at a time. But even with the little bit we've seen, I think it's largely been positive. Gary Singh, Ayton has good touch in the paint, short hooks. Yeah, Ayton, like, I don't know that Ayton is going to ever, like, you know, I think the Lakers have started to go away from the lobs, right? And some of the deep post stuff. It's been largely pocket passes and him in that, like, 10 to 15 foot range, but he's automatic from there. And it's a shot that he can get against just about anybody. Like, he's gonna have a real test on his hands next week against Victor Wembanyama, because that's a shot that Ayton could be at 15 feet and Wembanyama could be at 10 feet and Wemby could block that. So that's going to be a real test of Ayton's ability to navigate an 8-foot defender, 8.5 feet, you know, not basically a guy at the rim with his arms up. Just insanity with Wemby. But yeah, no, Ayton's touch has been, I mean, he's been, I'm going to pull it up here. I don't think these aren't his updated numbers, but from the mid range, he's been shooting. He's got to be in the mid to high 50s. Looking at it now on Basketball Reference, he's at, so that's 60% within 3 feet, which is actually bad for a center, and it's by far a career low for him. So that's something that should bounce back. His previous career low is 72%. So 12% lower within 3 feet of the basket. That's going into tonight. So maybe I don't know the impact of tonight, but from 3 to 10 feet, which is a little bit closer than the range I was talking about, but certainly a range that he operates well in, shooting 65%, which is a career best mark. He's typically in the low to mid 50s. Had one season where he shot almost 60% from there. And then 10 to 16 feet has been a little bit lower, 46%, but that's kind of in line. He's typically a guy in the mid to high 40s. And then 16 feet out to the 3-point line, typically a guy in the high 30s to maybe 40s. This year, he's shooting 100%, which won't sustain, and then has not taken a three. So yeah, he's automatic in those short roll, mid-range shots, and it's been a really important part of the offense. Keon Park, last question. Thank you for the super chat. If Braun/AR work well, Braun/Luka work well, Luka/AR so made it onto round 2-3 playoffs, but Braun decides to retire. Would Lakers need another season to see if AR/Luka get better? I think there's a lot of context that goes into this where I don't know. I think so. You're saying Luka. So LeBron works well with everybody, but then Luka and AR don't work as well. I think you still have a bit of a sample size, right? Like you're going to have the 2-man lineup data over the course of the season. You're going to see what it looks like in the playoffs. I mean, if we're talking Lakers going to round 2 or 3, I know it's championship or bust every season for the Lakers technically, but I think a second or third round appearance would be a win with this group, especially if they don't make a move or make like a small move. Like if they make a big move, and I think they on paper are more competitive, that's a different story. But if I told you right now the Lakers are going to make the conference finals, like that might not be the result you want ultimately, of course, which is a championship, but that's better than losing in the first round or not making the playoffs, right? Like obviously getting further is closer or is better. I think regardless, it's going to be retain Austin and then take the data that you have and the film that you have and then make a decision off of that going into next season. But is there a scenario in which maybe it makes sense to give it some more time? Sure. But I think you should be able to separate the LeBron component from this and make a better read on like what. And I also think, to be clear, like I don't think you should just trade. If you decide it doesn't work, you should not just trade Austin just to trade Austin. It has to be for a certain player of a certain caliber and a certain player that you are confident is going to fit with Luka. So again, it's not just like, well, Austin doesn't work, so like let's ship him out the second we can. It's like, no, like you got to make the right move, because the wrong move would be just selling Austin low or trading him for not the right piece. And then it's like, maybe you get even worse and then you regret that. So you got to be careful with that. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. What up, Harry? AR's rise gives him a case to be an all-star and also for Luka and AR to be the best backcourt duo in the league. I think the latter point is already there. I think I had a Philly fan get on me about VJ Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey, but I'm like, Luka's better than Tyrese Maxey and Austin's better than VJ Edgecombe. So I don't know what we're doing here. And I would give Maxey an overall edge over Austin, although the way Austin's playing, I think it's actually closer than some people think, but I will still like say, sure, if you want to give Maxey that edge, sure. But Luka's clearly better than Maxey. Austin's clearly better than Edgecombe. And, you know, we could talk about which backcourt's better in 5 years. Maybe that's more of a conversation, but for now, and I think for like the next 3 years, I would certainly rather have Luka and Austin. And the interesting thing with Luka and Austin, though, is they're more of an offensive backcourt and not really a defensive backcourt, because Luka doesn't primarily guard guards. He primarily guards forwards. So they're kind of a tricky backcourt where Maxey and Edgecombe guard guards, right? And because they play so many 3-guard lineups, there might be situations in which they're matched up on bigger players, but typically in like a typical unit, they're going to be matched up with guards defensively. So they're a true guard backcourt, whereas Austin is a true guard. Luka's a point guard on offense and a 3 or 4 defensively. So it kind of mucks up the positioning there, where other like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, both guards on both sides of the ball. And they're another one in the mix here, but I still like Luka's better than Donovan Mitchell. And with the way Austin's playing, I don't think it, like, you can make a case he's better than Darius Garland. I don't think that's crazy. So Darius Garland has had his own stuff in the playoffs. So yeah, no, certainly. And yeah, Austin, I think he's ultimately going to get squeezed because LeBron's going to come back and it's going to affect his numbers. But if LeBron is dealing with this sciatica thing for most of the next couple months, then there's certainly a chance Austin gets in. I mean, he's playing at an all-star level, to be very clear. Like, his numbers are all-star level numbers, but there's a lot that goes into that. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Luka Braun, AR Ayton with one elite 3-and-D defender. I think Lakers could beat anyone. Don't think you can play Rui as a closer in the playoffs because of defense. That's exactly the point I've been trying to make. I think those 4 plus an elite 3-and-D guy, I think they're right there with OKC, Denver, whoever else you want to throw in that mix. And I think if you're throwing Rui in the mix, there's a chance your offense is so good. And we're starting to see this with LA, where I think, like, to be clear, the biggest blemish for me through up to this point is, like, obviously the health has been the health, and that has impacted things on both sides of the ball. Lakers have not been a good defense to start the season. They have been a below average defense. That's in line with how I projected them. They've been a good offensive team and a below average defensive team. That was my read on the situation. I thought they'd be a top 10 to top 5 offense and probably a below average defense. That is currently playing out. There's still a lot of time left, but like, early returns are largely in line with that. But like, the offense could be good enough with Rui out there that maybe you just outscore everybody and you win that way. And you're like just passable enough defensively to eke by because your offense is so good. I think that's asking a lot from the offense, and there's basically no margin for error, where you have to be winning the free throw battle every night, which the Lakers often do, but like, you have to do that. You have to be holding your own in the 3-point battle, which LA's up and down in. And like, you have to be shooting probably around 50% every night, which like they do more often than not, but there will be some cold nights. But like, any night the offense goes cold, you're screwed. Whereas if you have that defender, you can start to build some lineups where it's like LeBron, that guy, Ayton, who I think has largely been solid defensively, Smart and Vando or LaRavia in there or whatever. And like, you can cobble together lineups with like 4 or 5 plus defenders that can hold their own. And no, they're not going to be OKC. They're not going to be the best defense in the league. But like, if they can be top 10-ish level with like that unit, and then your other units are just crushing it on offense, that's how like you can kind of go to different looks and be a really good team. So I'm with you. I think if you keep Rui as the 5th guy and the 5th starter, you are locking yourself into being a below average defense and having to rely on your offense. And I just don't think that's a true contending formula. Jerry Soriano, your lender for life, one of the best handles in the game as well. If we get 15 from Knecht and LaRavia, we won it all. I assume you mean collectively and not individually, because I do not see a world in which they both average 15. Just if we're looking at Luka, Austin, LeBron, Ayton, Rui, those are 5 guys that could average 15. But to your point, I think I'm going to take it the way I'm processing it. I think you're saying if those guys collectively average 15, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say they automatically win it all. I think there's a lot of factors here, especially with the Lakers defense, but that would be very helpful to have consistent production from those 2 guys when they both have been pretty up and down to start the season from an offensive perspective. So I do agree with the sentiment that like those two guys are important pieces and they need to play at a certain level. All right, going to go a little bit longer here. We got a couple ones here from Jurgen. LaRavia needs to get his handles up. And then Still Dre says LaRavia needs to not dribble at all. The dribbling has been an issue at times. So certainly the dribbling and the turnovers, there's been a little bit of over dribbling with him for sure. Lokman, hi Jovan, how much realistically do you think we can pay Reaves? I think they could pay him up to the 42. I mean, I think they could pay him the max. I think there's a lot of time left to determine whether he is worth that. I will say this, the version of Austin we've seen over the past week is 100% worth that. He's probably a $50 million player, if we're being honest, but he's going to have to scale back once Luka's back, once LeBron's back. He's going to scale down into a smaller role, and he's going to need to be an effective off-ball player, be an effective catch-and-shoot guy, figure out ways to function around those two guys having the ball a lot and being two high-usage guys. He's going to have to run second unit groups, and like he'll have to do what he's doing for tonight, 40 minutes in like maybe 2 to 3 shifts of 4 to 5 minutes each during pockets of the game. And like, can he kind of summon that for these mini stretches and ball out the way that he's been doing, but do it over like shorter spans? And we see with some guys, like some guys are rhythm guys and some guys need to touch the ball a certain amount. And some guys like need a bit of a rhythm to then build off of that. And I think Austin should be able to do it, but like there are certainly still questions with him long-term and his fit with Luka and all that stuff. But I think it's trending into the high 30s on the low side, but I think right now we're looking at probably a range of 37 to 42, depending on how the rest of the season goes. But I don't know how the rest of the season is going to go. So I can give you a prediction, but I don't want to. I mean, my prediction right now is I think he's going to get 5 years, 200 plus million. With when you're factoring in the 8% raises, it's going to clear that $40 million threshold. But that's my prediction right now. But that could be wrong. Daily meditation. You talk about defense, but want to keep Reaves. I know that daily meditation is not a Reaves guy. As I said earlier, I think that it's really hard to find a trade. If you want to make that argument that he does not fit because of the defense, I would like you to propose a trade that actually makes the Lakers better and makes sense and is realistic and is not for, I'm not saying you, but not the like backup center or fringe starting center or like backup wing that I've gotten so many times that Austin is like multiple tiers better than. Got one here. Light him up. Jovan, any updates on the Thiero timetable to return? Yeah, so I talked about it earlier. He is cleared to return to contact, and then the next step is him resuming 5-on-5 action. Then the next step would be him ramping up to play. So we don't have a clear timeline yet, but my read is probably 7 to 10 days until he realistically is eligible to play. So I think we're probably looking at end of next week into the weekend is a more realistic timetable, assuming there's no setbacks, which with Lakers players and injury stuff and how cautious they've been, I'm very hesitant to give like a optimistic projection here, but it does feel like we're at least a week away from him returning, if not probably a little bit longer. Mr. Messenger, it's early, but possible sellers and players. Thank you for the super chat. Well, good question, because my keep an eye on New Orleans is it's coming in handy. They are 0-4, last in the West right now. They are a train wreck. I don't know if you guys saw it. They started DeAndre Jordan fresh off of the couch. They started him, and they still had Derek Queen and Misi still played in the game, and both guys played more than DeAndre Jordan, but DeAndre Jordan got the start. They sent whatever message they wanted to send, Kings are 1-4. Suns are 1-4. Dallas is 2-3. Minnesota's 2-3. But I don't see those. And then Utah's 2-2. Portland's 3-2. So looking at the West, just to start, I think Phoenix, Sacramento, and New Orleans would be. I don't think anyone's going to like when we're talking about buyers and sellers. I think this is still more of a December conversation. So there's still a lot of time left to like. You still rarely see trades at this point, or even in November. Like there might be one trade that happens over the next month, but for the most part, trades don't really start till December. So I think we're a ways away from really having clarity, but early teams trending in the wrong direction are New Orleans, Sacramento, and Phoenix in the West. And then in the East, Brooklyn, we knew was going to be bad, but they don't really have much. Indiana's in a bit of a gap year, so I don't really view them as a seller. Orlando's 1-4. I don't view them as a seller. Toronto, 1-4. They are underachieving. I think they qualify as a potential seller. And Ochai Agbaji is a name that I really like if he becomes available. And then that's kind of it. You got some weird, like Chicago's overperforming. A bad sign I would say is Miami's 3-1 and their offense has been awesome. And let's look at Wiggins numbers to start. Wiggins is averaging 12 points a game, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, just under a steal, 1 block, and he is shooting. He's struggling from deep, 20% on threes, so that's not good on 3 attempts per game. 48% from the floor overall. Struggling with his free throws, 58%, 63% on twos. So. Yeah, I don't know what, like Miami does not project to be a seller right now. That was a team obviously with Wiggins that could go in either direction, but I think it's still early to your point, to your question. But I think some of the names we've already discussed of like, what does New Orleans do with Murphy and Jones? Sacramento, could they pivot off of Keon Ellis? Phoenix with Brooks? Toronto with Agbaji, or do they do like a bigger move? Although I don't really think like an Ingram or a Barrett or a Quickly really makes sense with this group. So yeah, I think some of the names we suspect might be available, I think are trending toward being available. Gary Singh without ARs, Herb Jones, possible for the Lakers. Possible, yes. Probable. I would say possible. I would say unlikely, though. I think the Lakers just don't like, you're starting at probably Rui up first and like 2 pick swaps. And I don't even think that's enough. I think, especially if they're not getting like a valuable player in terms of like a young cornerstone type piece, I think they'd want 2 picks, and Lakers don't have 2 picks to trade right now. So I think if they're not throwing in AR for Herb or for Trey, I think the price is a bit higher. But even for Herb, I think it's pretty tough. But if you could find a way to get Herb, then you pull that trigger without giving up Austin. Keon Park, final question. Using Rui plus a player, are there 3D 20+ million players out there that we can put our eyes on? Do you think other teams are willing to trade 3D players and make Lakers champions again? I think it just depends on the price, right? And what the team's getting. There obviously is some anti-Laker bias out there, but Pop isn't still in power right now, so he would be one of the culprits. Danny Ainge, though, might be another one. I think I still keep coming back to Wiggins and Brooks as 2 guys who I think if you just go through the teams and how the teams are set up, and that 20s-ish price point where you can entice a team with the expirings. So it's got to be a player of a certain caliber. They got to be making a certain amount. They got to potentially be available. They also have to be in a situation where the team would want some expiring flexibility from the Lakers to get off the second year, or the extra year of Wiggins, the extra year of Brooks. I still think Wiggins and Brooks are the 2 names I keep coming back to. Now, as aforementioned, Miami's 3-1. They're 3rd in the East. I don't know which way that's going to go, but obviously if they're a top 6 seed, they probably just keep Wiggins. Phoenix, I think that's a sinking ship. They're 29th in defense. They're a bit of a mess, and that could be a situation where Brooks becomes available in December or January. Otherwise, I mean, Herb Jones is another one, but I just don't think he's gettable unless the Lakers are willing to put in Austin, which I think that would be. I think he's just better than Herb Jones. And also a big thing with two big things with Herb Jones are the health and the shooting. Shooting you can maybe get over or look past, but the health, there's like no assurances he's going to stay healthy based on his track record. So yeah, I don't think there's any new names in that regard. By the Dip, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. Let me make sure I have not missed any questions. Gary Singh, don't think Hayes is the answer for backup C, bad D. Pause. I got to say pause there. In all seriousness, Jackson, look, rough game tonight. Jackson, he sometimes is like just wreaking havoc in a bad way out there. 2 points, 13 minutes. And it's not even with the points, but like just what was kind of neutralized with Minnesota's defense, as we saw in the playoffs. Did have a steal and a block. Like I think the defense overall this season has been solid, but tonight was not good. And he did pick up 4 fouls in just 13 minutes. And again, he can just sometimes pick up these ridiculous fouls that, you know, whatever. But I think it's an area that they can certainly upgrade on. I would not. I think as we're seeing, like one of the things that I've been impressed by so far, and we'll see how like long he could keep it up. But looking at DeAndre Ayton's game logs, he's played 34 more minutes in 4 of the 5 games. Like he projects to be a guy who could probably play 36, 37, 38, 39 minutes in the playoffs. And he's got to stay out of foul trouble, right? And he's got to defend at a certain level. But assuming he could do both of those things at a reasonable rate, if he's a guy who's in the mid to high 30s, you like backup center is still important, but it's less important. Now, I think the primary thing is, can you go get that wing? And then if you can also find, you know, with Phoenix, for example, can you poach a Nick Richards or someone like that? That's at least like whether he's better than Jackson, he's probably better than Jackson. I think it's honestly relatively close. I think he's been underwhelming in Phoenix, but maybe you have an alternative there. That's maybe like the most realistic path. I would not invest too much in like getting a backup center who's just going to play 10, 12 minutes a night. Now, we have seen the Lakers completely ignore that position and it bite them in situations in the playoffs. And so like there's a delicate balance there where I think it needs to be somewhat of a priority, but first and foremost, I think they have to go get that fifth starter 3-and-D guy. Then after that, if you could add in a center to that, that would be great. If not, maybe you do a separate smaller move for a center. But so I think there are other holes on this roster, but you know, primarily being the perimeter defense, but certainly backup center could be a position that gets improved on. Gorilla, is Max Christie a possibility for Gabe and a first? Possibility. So I think the money, I don't know Dallas's cap off the top of my head, but because they'd be taking on some money there, like for this season. Obviously, longer term, Max is on a contract for multiple years, and Gabe's an expiring. Right now, they are they're past the first apron. They're a little bit under the second apron, so I actually don't think Dallas could take on Gabe. Maybe that gap, but I don't think they could take on Gabe. I think they'd have to throw someone else in, and then the Lakers have the roster flexibility to take on an extra player, but it has to be still ideally like they'd be shedding money. And if that, like there's a narrow path here for like, I'm looking at Dallas's cap. Maybe they could throw in Exum. That might be the player to get it done. That it, kind of gets you closer to similar numbers for Max and Exum versus Gabe. So Dallas still takes on a little bit of money. Lakers shed a little bit of money, but they take on the extra player. That could work. With Max, like he's had an interesting run. He had a really promising start with Dallas, and then I feel like he hasn't quite been. Now I'm looking at it. He's shooting 57% on threes. I did not realize he was having this. Okay. I take it back. He's playing so the rebounding has taken a big hit, but he is playing in some giant lineups. The defensive playmaking hasn't quite been there, but he's been shooting the ball really well. And going back to last year, the scoring went up a little bit in Dallas, but the efficiency went down. But he was doing a little bit more on the ball, and the rebounding was better. So, yeah, I mean, you guys know how I feel about Max. I don't need to be sold on Max, but I think to be honest, I think the Lakers will probably have higher aspirations, no pun intended, for this type of player. But and also there's like the saving face element of like you already kind of traded Max, but maybe I think you guys would be happy if they brought back Max, or a lot of you would. So in summation, maybe I think the biggest issue here is Dallas is you got to get Nico Harrison to get back on the phone with Rob Pelinka. And with how much hate he's already getting to start this season and how badly it's going in Dallas right now, I don't know if Nico Harrison can do that. Ryan Mitchell praying for a Vucevic or Nurkic buyout. I would be okay with either one of these, especially if you got off of the Maxey contract. I will note with both of these guys, I have real defensive concerns with both. Vucevic has been a guy people have asked about trading for. I think he was a popular trade candidate last year before the Luka trade. There was some buzz about him going to Golden State. And I just continually said, like, I don't think the Lakers have the perimeter defenders to support him as statistically been one of the worst rim protectors in the league over the last few years. It's really problematic and a real, like, Chicago's off to the good start now, but more often than not, it's Sabonis-esque. Like it is. And I think it's actually been worse than Sabonis over the last few years. Nurkic is better defensively, but I still think is probably a net negative defensively now in a backup role. Probably fine. They both give you boosts on the glass. They're both better rebounders than Jackson, both more skilled around the basket in terms of like finishing, and like Jackson's obviously more the lob threat above the rim guy, but I mean, Vooch, we know his resume, former All-Star. Nurkic is, I think it brings me back to the Colin Sexton trade, which I just still don't understand. But I'll be honest, like neither one of them is my cup of tea, but they're both better than Maxi Kleber. So if there's a way to flip Kleber and make a empty roster spot and then add one of them as a buyout guy, I would be open to that. I would prefer a more defensive minded player, if that makes sense. Omar Saul, Nurkic off the bench. Yeah, in both scenarios, both guys are coming off the bench. DeAndre Ayton's, they're not moving Ayton to the bench. Tilly Khalifa, is there any universe where you can get Herb Jones without giving up AR? I touched on this a little bit, but I don't think so. Like, there's a universe. I think it's very unlikely. But with all that said, I'm going to wrap here. I appreciate you all so much for rocking with me for going on almost 2 hours. Those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back on Friday, probably going live during the day. Tomorrow, I'm going to take the day off, going to see my son, spend some time with him. So that'll be off day tomorrow. Then Friday will be Halloween. I'll probably go live at some point during the day, and then also be back for the Lakers Grizzlies game, considering doing playback for that game. So let me know if there's interest in that. If you guys would want me to do a playback and watch the game with me, and we could just hang out. But yeah, otherwise, I'll talk to you guys on Friday. Appreciate the late night gang. This was a fun one. Dare I say, the stream of the season so far. I think it was the best one. But I appreciate you guys and talk to you all very soon.